Do aliens exist? And can you explain to me your personal experience with non-human intelligence?
Yeah, so I mean, we say alien, and our brain automatically jumps to what is an alien is. Most people think an alien is an extraterrestrial life form because that's what is in our media, that's what's in our movies, and that might not necessarily be the case. When even again, you say UFO, people automatically make the association to aliens, right? So it's this kind of like if you're doing a Vipassana meditation observation of tracking how your brain is interpreting what these words mean. What do we mean by when we say alien? So for I'm not trying to be like so drawn out about it, but I think this is a really important point, is because when we say alien, everybody is automatically assuming extraterrestrial, and non-human intelligence, especially those that are involved or represent the UFO subject, might not necessarily be extraterrestrials, right? They could be interdimensional, extra-dimensional, or they could be something that we don't have concepts for, so we don't even have the proper words or terminologies to create the concept that is the direct correlation of what are UFOs and aliens and anomalous phenomena.
Yeah.
So do I think that humans are being engaged by non-human intelligence? Absolutely. As we understand it, right? One of my friends, exo-academian, would say non-conventional human intelligence, because if they happen to be humans that are time traveling from the future or distant past or what have you, they are kind of humans in a way, right?
Yeah, just because they're not in this time frame or whatever else, if they're a wormhole, however you want to explain it, it's not that they're less human. They're just not of our time.
Right.
And so we would be aliens to people 2,000 years ago.
Right.
Even though we're all human.
Right.
But I ask you that question intentionally because I think that most people think in sort of like a binary modality of, are there gray beings on other planets or not? And within the UAP, UFO, anomalous community, I understand there's a lot of nuance when it comes to that question, and that different people have different schools of thought when it comes to, are these interdimensional beings? Are they time travelers? Are they humans from a different planet that are coming over? All that kind of stuff. So I'm curious, do you have like a theory as far as like how you would try to think about aliens that's unlike what Hollywood portrays it to be?
I mean, if you dig deep into the research, there's people who have covered almost every type of theory you can imagine, and even one, just to give an example, is the crypto-terrestrial or ultra-terrestrial theory, which is actually saying, these are actually entities that have lived on Earth for a long time and are highly advanced, but they live hidden to us, and they try to pose themselves as extraterrestrial, so as a deception, so we won't find them. And Mac Tanius, before he passed away, wrote a book on that. So, what
are some of the theories that you think are most interesting to you? Obviously, I don't think any one person has a singular answer where they say, this is what it is, this is what everyone's experiencing, and this is the answer to all of our questions. But I know there's a lot of different theories. So are there a couple that you think are interesting, a couple that you think are kind of silly that you don't necessarily subscribe to?
So I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here.
Okay.
Because I'm going to say what we call the extraterrestrial hypothesis, the ETH, is actually highly probable, right?
And what is this?
So the extraterrestrial hypothesis is that, aliens are from outer space somewhere, and they're using super advanced technology if they're 1,000 or 10,000 or a million years ahead of us, and they're going from here to there. That's become unpopular because it's not sexy anymore. In the 50s, it was like really sexy, right? Like, oh my God, they're from Mars.
Space travel.
Then they were from farther away.
Yeah, so nebulous reticuli or something like that.
Yeah, Zeta Reticuli, and I mean now it's everything, Arcturus and Pleiadian and all that. Yeah. So I don't find that far-fetched at all. So I think that's highly probable that some of what we call UFOs and UAP are probably extraterrestrial in some way, shape, or form. But I personally, I really like what you can call like a extra-dimensional hypothesis. Entities that are able to, not even able to, their nature transcends space-time as we know it, like 3D and even time. And they're able to interact with us in our in our reality, even though they're coming from, well, I guess people would say like a higher frequency. I don't understand. That's what I'm saying. It's like beyond what I can even comprehend, right?
Would this be similar to like a multiverse, or maybe like an alternate reality that?
No, it's not even. It's within our reality. It's just phasing faster, right? Like higher frequency vibration, whatever you call it. So we just don't, we're not built to perceive it, right? But they can still step down and interface with us through technology,
right?
You know, and that's again, you know, I'm kind of getting out of my league to try to explain something like that, but I think it's highly fascinating. And if you look at all the different types of things that, you know, UFOs and UAP demonstrate, it does seem like they are able to kind of bend our reality in different ways that we can't explain. So
right.
in either way, they have it would seem that UFO intelligence or non-human intelligence has a way to manipulate our reality and even our consciousness, and you know, probably by matter of fact, because they are operating at a higher level.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the reason you are drawn to that sort of explanation, maybe that altered reality explanation, is due to your own personal experiences, which is a very interesting piece of this that I'm excited to hear about. Would you mind explaining to me in all the detail how you have started to experience these sort of phenomena, and how you're continuing to sort of like create situations where you're able to continue the experience?
Right. Okay. So, you know, that's going to go back to even when I was a kid. And, you know, when I was a young kid, I had different types of what we can call metaphysical experiences. And the first, I guess you can say, interaction with a non-human intelligence was when I was a kid. And this happened several times. You know, I'm in my bed late at night and I hear, it's almost like like random chattering, right? I can't kind of decipher what it's saying at first, but I hear it in my mind, and I'm like, you know, getting up, looking, kind of like, what's going on? Like, is there something in the room with me?
And roughly how old are you?
5, 6.
Okay.
And all of a sudden I see kind of like an entity that looks like a shadow, but it's glistening a little, and it's moving, and it's moving, and as it's moving, it's like collapsing into like a dark orb. And as I see it, the first thing I hear is, he can see us. And there were 3 of these. And when I heard that, I freaking, like, I froze. Like, I'm panicking because I'm a little kid in a dark room, and I couldn't disconnect my mind from the voice, right? Because even when I'm listening to I can hear like random chattering, and even though I hear the chattering in the background, that message of, you know, he can see us was super direct, even though there was still that chattering in the background. Like if you ever saw that movie The Knowing with Nicolas Cage, and they call them the Whisper People, like whoever did that, they either are intuited that somehow, or they knew from experience that kind of phenomenon.
But you hadn't seen that movie when this experience happened to you.
No, that movie didn't even exist. So that was the very first kind of interaction like that, and I just covered myself and heard it for a while, and I don't know if I went to sleep or whatever, and then I had several occurrences like that where I would wake up and I'd be in another room, and I don't know if that's sleepwalking or whatever it is. I don't want to speculate because I don't remember anything other than that. But it scared the shit out of me.
And how long did that exact experience last, like time-wise?
Just a few minutes.
Okay.
It was just a few minutes. Each time was just a few minutes. It was never like 20 minutes or anything like that. It was literally like between 2 and 10 minutes, maybe tops. But you know, it's, again, I'm like so frightened in the experience that time is kind of distorted. But you know, not just that, actually. So also, when I was very young, I was having spontaneous out-of-body experiences, and just simple ones. You know, like you're laying down and you're kind of awake, and then you're falling into sleep in a hypnagogic state, but you don't realize you fall asleep. yet, or at least I didn't at the point where like, because there was no lapse in my consciousness. I'm just laying down, kind of looking up at the ceiling, and all of a sudden I'm, I'm rising above myself and I'm looking down at myself, and after like a few seconds I'm like, holy shit, that's me, and then boom, right back in my body, kind of thing. So I had experiences like that, and because of those kind of experiences, I was always interested in UFOs and metaphysics and things like that. So I was always reading books and watching the late night UFO file shows on like Discovery and wherever they had them. But yeah, interesting correlation. I can't say that this is connected, but where I live in the Hudson Valley. So there was a huge Hudson Valley UFO wave during that time. And, I didn't know this until I was older, but during that time period, there was one of the most famous UFO flaps in U.S. history called the Hudson Valley UFO wave. And Dr. J. Allen Hynek, before he passed away, co-authored a book on the Hudson Valley UFO wave.
Wow. Unbeknownst to you, you were just a kid, obviously.
Yeah.
And did you tell your parents about these experiences?
No, not these. Not these, no, I did not.
Did you tell anyone?
I mean, I probably told my mom, and they're, just like nightmare kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's never something I would bring up. And I have to state that at this time, when these experiences were happening, there was no connection. I wasn't tying this to the UFO phenomenon.
Sure. It's just a weird thing that was happening.
Right. I didn't know, like, honestly, like when the closest thing kind of to it was like if I was a kid and I saw like a ghost kind of movie, that seemed closer to it because I didn't have a concept of like non-human intelligence at 5.
Sure.
Right. I wasn't thinking about that.
And how frequently would these happen?
So it happened maybe a dozen times over the course of 2 years or so.
Okay.
So every few months there'd be something like that.
Out of body and then shadowy figures and then out of body, and it would kind of alternate?
Yeah. Well, the out of body stuff happened sporadically throughout my life. That never really stopped. It happened more frequently in like my teenage years, actually, for whatever reason. I can speculate on to why that is, but
could you speculate? What do you think that is?
I had a little bit of a rough childhood, so a lot of times they say trauma brings about these kind of experiences, and I would say that certainly correlates with my own story.
Interesting.
So, because when you have traumatic experiences, you kind of have to have a way to detach yourself from regular reality, and I guess that kind of makes sense, because I'm into like, obviously after years and stuff, Buddhism and meditation and all that is like very big in my own journey and stuff. And that kind of, it's very natural to me to detach that way.
Interesting.
And I'm like, I don't know if you can tell now, but I'm highly introverted.
No, I actually wouldn't be able to tell.
I'm super introverted.
Interesting.
For sure. And I think all that kind of plays into the whole thing.
Yeah. And I've heard, have you speculated that maybe it was like sleep paralysis, night terrors? Like obviously I'm sure you've looked into that.
So I've had all those things. I've had those, and I can distinguish the difference.
What is the difference?
When you're in a sleep paralysis, you can't move, number one. When I was a kid, I was fully functioning, conscious, and I could, pull the covers over my head, hide, things like that. When you're in sleep paralysis, you're trying to move, and you can't really. You can move a little bit until you finally can break yourself out of it.
Mm-hmm. In the sleep paralysis, did you see anything?
When I had sleep paralysis, no. I mean, one time, but I count that just as a sleep paralysis kind of thing.
And what did you see in that experience?
I saw a small entity, but again, that could totally be. I don't. That's something. If in my own book, if I can't distinguish if I'm lucid, like awake or not, it's something I kind of just put it on the side and say that's highly questionable. Right?
Okay.
I do think that such things exist, like sleep paralysis, hallucinations, being in a hypnagogic state and seeing things that are not there or a product of your mind. But that gets into a really hypothetical discussion on are you perceiving different realms and realities, or is that literally just a figment of your imagination?
Sure. Now
and what's the difference?
Now we can discard that because it's so questionable, and you can tell the difference between being lucid and being in a sleep paralysis state.
Right.
But what was that entity that you saw in the sleep paralysis?
Oh, so it was just like this. It almost looked like what we would call an alien, and it was very small, and it had the big eyes, and it was, it was just standing there. But there was another one where it was on the ceiling looking down on me, and that one was a little freakier. But again, it's so questionable to me that that's something I just kind of write it off and say, okay, that's too questionable.
That's separate from these other experiences that are much more lucid.
Yeah.
And you can tell the difference because you've been in both.
Yes.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard people speculate. When I spoke with Jay, I started doing a little bit more research, and obviously his experiences were very sort of dramatic and intense, just like full abduction and things like that.
Right.
And I started looking it up, and I did research a little bit of like the trauma element, which I know is probably controversial within the community. Like, I'm sure people have tried to write off your story and say, oh, you had trauma from your childhood, whatever. So these things are a disassociation.
Right.
How do you reconcile like that idea with your own journey?
I mean, I don't feel, if you want to get down to it on that, you need science, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could that be determined? Probably eventually. So that's a really difficult question.
Yeah.
I can only tell you what I experience and how I feel about it and what I think about it. Sure, I've definitely considered all those things.
Sure.
And on my best, summation of everything, I know when I've experienced something that's legitimately going on. I don't have other kind of episodes like this in my life where I'm imagining different things.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Especially, what I told you with my job is and everything. I'm very kind of like sharp and on stuff, highly observant.
Right.
So I think in my best estimation, I can determine the difference between such a thing.
Yeah. And as you are getting older, these experiences are becoming a little bit more intense. Is that fair to say?
So it's a lot of times for people who have these experiences, and me included in this, is it comes in waves. I mean, some people have it more frequently than others, but a lot of times, what we call, an experiencer or somebody who experiences, UFO encounters, but also other types of kind of metaphysical experiences, if you want to call it that. Some people won't even like you grouping those together, and I understand why, but it's different for everybody at different stages of their life. And for me, it's been in waves. So I've, when I was younger, obviously I had some strong waves, and then I had another really strong wave when I was 20 years old that like slapped me into this whole thing and brought me to where I am now, basically. But it's been periodic for me.
Yeah.
But again, we talked before about CE5 and close encounters of the fifth kind, and actually being able to initiate these kind of encounters if you would like to, and that that kind of changes the probability of them happening. And that's participatory, so it's not just it's happening to you now. Now you're part of the conversation of that in a way. Mm-hmm. But be talking about when kind of like everything happened for me, because I didn't want to gloss over this. So when I was about 20 years old, I was 20 years old because it was 2007. So during that time is when I had like second really big wave in my life of encounters that brought me here, and that's why I created Engaging the Phenomenon and everything like that, because all of a sudden, during this time, I'm 20 years old. I've been interested in these subjects for a number of years. I've been reading books. I've been practicing meditation actually very diligently.
When did you start meditating?
About 18 years old.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I started with like Chan, which is kind of, the Chinese version of Zen, because I was doing martial arts.
Okay.
And
what kind of martial arts did you do?
Chinese martial arts.
Okay, cool.
Loosely.
Yeah. Dragon Ball Z shirt, bro. That's how it started.
Yeah. I always loved it. Kind of Eastern culture has always been a theme for me.
Sure.
To this day. So, spontaneously, I guess you can say, in 2007, I was working an overnight shift, and this guy I work with, who's like super conservative, and we talk, say, hey, how's your family? How are you doing? Kind of thing. I never had expressed to him any interest in these kind of topics. So he's just cleaning the area, and he's like, "Hey, did you hear about the UFOs in Mexico?" And I'm like, at first I think like, is he joking with me or something, right? Like, why is he saying this to me? And I didn't hear about any kind of UFO event or sighting in Mexico, so I just kind of brushed it off and said, no, I didn't. And that was kind of that. So I finished my shift and I'm driving home. I go home and it's probably like 8:30 in the morning at this point, because it was an overnight shift, and I went to sleep. And so when I'm sleeping, I have this crazy UFO dream, right? So in my dream, I'm driving like around the corner from where I live, and it's nighttime, and there's this like electrical orange plasma UFO 20 feet above my car or something, and maybe 15 or 20 feet. And I'm like kind of freaking out because I'm in the dream and I'm super reactive. So all I'm thinking is like, I got to get away from this thing. I don't even know why I was thinking that. I was just, so I start speeding, and like this thing just will not make any distance from me. There's nothing I can do. And I'm feeling these electrical pulses through my body and kind of freaking out. And then I just like snap out of the dream after like a few minutes, right? 2.5 minutes or something. And I wake up and it's like 3:30 in the afternoon or so, and I'm like gathering myself. You snap out of a dream, you're kind of like getting reoriented. And a family member, they finished work, whatever, they come in the house, and I'm walking towards the door because I'm going to go out or whatever. And they say to me, "Hey, did you hear about the UFOs in Mexico?" And I'm like, screw this. This is nonsense at this point, right? This is bullshit. This is absolute nonsense. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go down the street. I'm going to go to this Chinese place that I always go to and just get Chinese food and like cool off, because this is too crazy right now. So I get in my car and I start driving, and I drive like a few hundred feet. And mind you, it's like 3:30 in the afternoon at this point. So I'm driving, and right clear center of my view, in a perfectly, clear blue sky, I just see an orange fireball stationary. And I look at it and I'm like, holy shit, that's a UFO. And as soon as I think that, because I was thinking it like in my head, it starts to move. So I'm like freaking out at this point, but at this point I'm elated, and I'm like trying to chase this thing. And I'm driving, I went off course from the Chinese place, and I'm driving trying to chase it, and it eventually just gets out of my view. But it was just it was a fireball, right? There was no trail, no nothing, and it was slowly gliding through the sky. And I haven't seen any kind of fireballs like that in the random blue sky.
Yeah, it's not the sun,
right? No. And so I was freaking out. But the thing that hit me the hardest about that was, not even the UFO, and this is a very important point. It was not even the sighting of the UFO that happened in broad daylight that really hit me. It was the entire chain of events that occurred so serendipitously or synchronistically, that and how it took place, that like really smacked me. Because like, what does that mean? How is that even possible? Like, I could understand the idea of I see a UFO in the sky, but to think about and understand the causation of how can this string of events happen in such a way, right? How is that possible? Because you're not talking about just seeing some kind of like craft with entities in the sky or whatever it is, right? You have this whole, was that intuited by me? Was that designed by the other intelligence? Was it, designed by a higher intelligence than that? And that gets into what Dr. J. Allen Hynek called high strangeness, is just like a level of synchronicity that is ridiculous, right? That there's just no explanation for something like that.
Were you talking publicly on Twitter or Facebook
or
anything?
This was in 2007. So at this point, I'm completely in the closet. My family members had known that I probably have an interest because they see me reading the books and watching stuff, but I had not talked to even them about this yet. But we're going to get to that. But no, I wasn't even on social media at that point. But this was the first of kind of like 3 events that happened in a row that kind of actually led me out and to get involved in social media and to create Engaging the Phenomenon and do everything that I do now.